Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 218 of the Board Game Barrage podcast, coming to you for the first time ever from South Africa. Ooh.
Whoa.
We're all in South Africa together.
Yeah, we all flew over. No, it's just me. I am in South Africa. You're all still in America, so who's the real winner? It's me.
Well, if you listen to the last episode, there was a mention of a dumb Neelan character.
Yes, repeatedly.
We're not sure if that's you or the you in South Africa. It's unclear at this point.
Is this the first time a podcast has ever been recorded in South Africa?
How dare you? How dare you? So uncalled for. I am Neelan, the orange tank, and with me are my cohorts, the red and green tanks, Kellen and Mark, whose annoying voices you've already heard. So let's get right past that.
Our annoying voices weren't cut with your melodic tones last week, so...
Yeah, exactly. I can't even
Unfiltered.
imagine how annoying that must have been to all of our listeners. This week on the show, we're going to be doing the Listener Top 20 2022 edition. You loved it last year. We got submissions for your hot games this year, and we're going to see how those lists have changed in some exciting ways. As a bit of a tease, there's some surprises when I looked at the data this time around. That's coming up late.
Biblio's making a push finally, much deserved, hopefully. I haven't
Maybe.
seen the numbers. Only
Who can say, Mark? Who can say? We'll find out in the second half. Before we get there, though, we're going to be talking about the games that we've been playing. And this week, Kellen has been playing Schotten Totten 2. I've been playing some Force Science. And Mark is going to be telling us about the Bridges of Shangri-La. So let's kick it off with Kellen with the game whose name I've already forgotten 3 times so far this record, Schotten Totten 2.
So a little bit of origin story is needed here because it is with great...
Power.
What's that word for pride where it's like you can't believe that their pride could have gotten the best of them?
Arrogance?
Maybe. Reiner
Hubris.
Knizia, like, you don't release a 2. It's like there's no Cosmic Encounter 2. This isn't something that we do in board games, and yet... the only true and living Dr. Reiner Knizia has made a sequel, Schotten Totten 2. And if you're not familiar with Schotten Totten, you probably are familiar with Battle Line, which is the same game. It wasn't always the same game. It was Schotten Totten, then Battle Line came out with the tactics cards, and then Yellow said, we love tactics cards, and then added them back into Schotten Totten. But the theme is like a chicken versus another chicken. I'm serious. That's the theme of the game.
What is the
There's
subtitle of
adversary.
Schotten Totten 2? What is it?
There's no
Schotten Totten 2 The Revenge or Schotten Totten 2 the Chickening, or what do we got going on?
I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, I did read something that maybe at one point it was going to be called like Siege Line instead of Battle Line, which again, immediately better than these chickens who are fighting each other. So if you know me, you know that I am skeptical. And when someone says, I have made a board game and it's amazing and now I'm making a 2, my skepticism peaks. It skyrockets. It's at the very tippy top of my skepticism. Okay? And I am pleased to say that Schotten Totten 2, I won't bury the lead. I won't shut up and sit down you here. It is good. Surprisingly good. If you're familiar with Battle Line or Schotten Totten, you are playing cards to different hops or battles where you are trying to build poker hands slowly over time to win a conflict. And in Battle Line, both players are able to win these battles, which is actually not the case in Schotten Totten 2, which is one of the most interesting innovations in the game. You are slowly building a run or a set of the same numbers, and you're seeing what your opponent's putting down. And perhaps the most interesting system in all of Battle Line and all of Schotten Totten and all of the 2s, the 1s, all of the variants of Schotten Totten is that if you can prove that your opponent cannot beat you by virtue of all the cards that are in the discard pile, all the cards that are in all the battles, you can actually just win the battle even though they haven't played the cards. And so that is sort of the fun, brain-burnery part of Battle Line and Schotten Totten. And that makes the leap here into the sequel. It's the same, but with more, bigger and badder than ever before. So what does Schotten Totten 2 do that Schotten Totten 1 does not do? Well, it introduces this concept of an attacker and a defender. Okay? So the attacker is the only one that can win these battles. The defender can only prevent the other player from winning. So the win state for the attacker is that they have to win the same battle twice, the same spot, or 4 disparate battles one time in order to win the game. And the way that the defender wins is if the attacker runs out of cards. If the deck runs out, they have successfully held them off, the battle has ended, which leads to an entirely different feel for the game because you, as the attacker, unlike in the original battle line, can actually retreat from a battle and discard all the cards that you've played to it. But again, that's not going to help you all the time because you're getting closer to your endgame state. But what it does mean is that as the defender, you want to lull people in. You want to lull them into playing a card or two into a hop, and then and then they have to retreat and they're very upset that what has happened, as opposed to in battle line where that tempo consideration is not quite the same. In addition to that, not all the hops are the same. You might think, wait a minute, what?
Is a hop?
Well, what's a hop? Yeah, many people might question what a hop is, but not our studious listeners of the Board Game Rush podcast. They would, of course, know what a hop is. For example, one hop only
tell
accepts
me, that'd be great.
2 cards only. One is 3 cards. One is 4 cards. Another is, actually, this one is only runs. Only runs count here, or only colors count here. And so you are building out this brain-burning sort of, okay, this pile is only sums, and this pile is only sums, but it's negative. Very, very brain-burning, which is great. But then it adds some chaos, some real chaos, okay? Because if someone plays an 11, you can play a 0 of the same color on the other side to discard those 2 cards, so you can never rely on your 11s, which is chaos. In addition to that, the defender has 3, I don't know what they are, first of all. They're like jars of, oil cauldrons. Okay? In the world, the day started out so calm. A log on the fire, haggis on the plates, then blam, a bang made the castle shake and knocked over your malt. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. As usual, your neighbor has decided it's time for you to move out. See, it doesn't mention anything here that these are all chickens that we're talking about.
I will say, though, the doctor can really weave a tale there. I find myself spellbound by that story.
I just want to be clear that, I don't know that everyone is a chicken because I see some hands. Regardless, there are 2 chickens at war. Yeah, so net, TLDR, the attacker-defender relationship is different. The attacker role plays more like traditional battle line, and the defender has some different considerations in tempo. There's also an increased chaos to the relationship between the 0s and the 11s, as well as, the oil cauldrons, where the defender 3 times per game only can just delete the first card that the attacker has played in any row, which is hilariously fun, but approaching like a take-that-y kind of thing that feels bad as the attacker. I like Schotten Totten 2. It is a worthy follow-up to Schotten Totten 1. I will say that unlike a film where there's some narrative carryover that you might want to own Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 12, one does not have any narrative carryover between Schotten Totten 1 and Schotten Totten 2. I am concerned that it is the original that will stand up to repeated pressure. But this is a wrinkle. This is a good wrinkle. Have you guys played? You guys like Battleline?
Yeah.
I've still not played it.
Oh
wow.
My God.
Yeah. What's funny is that I hadn't played it for the longest time. So when they introduced, I think it was like they did a medieval reprint like maybe a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
I ended up...
Pretty.
Yeah, I got that, but I have not played it yet. So I've just had it sitting around.
I think that Battleline itself will easily be in your top 3 or 4 favorite dueling games.
Okay.
Because specifically the mechanism where you can sort of prove things out. You're like, there's an 8 over there, and and then you play your 9, not because you want to play the 9, but because you want to mathematically prove that now, I'm
right.
That is right up your alley. This is like a variant. I did have this sort of feeling like Netrunner, where it was like cool that it was a different feeling that each person had. But I would guess that more people would prefer being the attacker than the defender, because the defender is like slowly losing everywhere the whole time.
Got it.
And just barely holding on. Really good though. Mark?
Is the idea that you're supposed to take turns being the attacker and defender once or something like that?
Yes. And then there's like blah, blah, blah. If you tied as the defender.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. At the back, revenge. Under the section revenge. To reveal the true winner, which I don't know how you log on BG Stats. We recommend playing 2 games back-to-back, exchanging roles. Yeah, I don't know how balanced that is. I have not played it enough to comment.
Yeah.
I do know that they have, I believe, amended the rulebook to make it a little easier as the defender, but I could be mistaken there.
How long does it take? Like, because one of the charms of Battleline or Schotten Totten, the original, is the quickness of it. Does the brain burnery aspect of it slow down the game a lot, you think?
I find that it is more brain burnery than the other one. So if the reason that you dislike Schotten Totten, which people do, and in fact, like, I probably prefer like Lost Cities in this realm personally than Battleline, but I don't think that most gamers, I think, would not agree. I think Battleline is like a tried and true classic. And I'm actually surprised it doesn't have more representation in our top 50s collectively because of how just like good it is. I liked it. I like to. I'm excited to play more with the tactics cards because it has the exact same thing that Battleline has, which is like you don't need to use the tactics cards, but you can.
Yeah.
So I have played like 1 game without it and 1 game with them. I foresee us playing this more. I do find there's a little bit of analysis paralysis just because a card could be really valuable in many different scenarios. Then you're also checking like a discard and what's out. There's quite a bit going on for the rule set.
Yeah, when you were describing the rules, that's what struck me. With Battleline, you do have a lot of interesting choices to make for sure, but it seems they'd be a little more clear-cut than they are in how you're describing Schotten Totten 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to more articulate that, like, I was pleasantly surprised by what I thought was the direct-to-VHS sequel to Schotten Totten has, in fact, turned out to be a good game. And, in fact, that was one of my other thoughts is, like, if this doctor, right, who is a doctor, the only true and living, like, if he's going to make a game that's like the sequel, that's the 2, he better believe in it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Like, when Taj Mahal 2 comes out, we're going to know it's a banger before we play it.
That's right.
Because he doesn't let us down.
And then just imagine what he's going to do with Schotten Totten 3.
Imagine what he's going to do with Loco 2. Right, Kellen?
And that is Schotten Totten 2 from the only true and living Dr. Rainer Knizia.
So I have played a few games now of For Science. This is a real-time cooperative dexterity game by Eric Royce, who surprisingly is the designer of the ultra-heavy Euro game Spirit Island. So this could not be more different, aside for obviously also being a cooperative game. But this is a frantic, silly game where you are racing, stacking blocks in order to collectively come up with a universal cure. What you're trying to do ultimately falls into like 3 phases, and I think it almost works best if you describe it from back to front. So the ultimate goal is to build a puzzle, like a little tile-laying puzzle, that collectively gets you a certain number of points. That's going to depend on player count. Now, this puzzle is a collection of sort of triangular-ish shapes or collections of triangle hexes, that sort of thing, that all have red, blue, and yellow symbols contained within patterns on the puzzle. And anytime you connect 2 pieces of the puzzle together, you are potentially containing shapes of that color within them. Once you've contained a collective number of shapes that meet your target goal, you've won the game. So that's your ultimate goal. How do you get these puzzle pieces? Because at the start of the game, you only have 1 of them, and you have to collect more of them throughout the game. You do that by building these quick cures for diseases that will appear on your board. In order to do that, you have to stack blocks that match a schematic corresponding to that cure. So this schematic for this cure might say, okay, this cure starts with a green block touching the table, then a red triangle that's only touching that green block, an orange cylinder that's only touching that red block and that green block, and then so on. But beyond what is allowed to touch another piece and what isn't allowed to touch another piece, there's no other direction as to how this structure can exist. You obviously can't lie it flat on the table because only one piece is allowed to be touching the table as dictated by the schematic. But how you stack up, whether you stack sideways, how you build this cure with these building blocks is entirely up to you. And sometimes these may not even be viable cures or viable builds, because how do you get the schematics? Someone is playing cards to these collective labs in order to build these schematics so that pieces logically connect to each other. But as you're doing that, you're sort of having to think ahead to, well, is this actually structurally viable? If I put this card into the schematic here, am I actually creating something that someone else can build? And like I said, all of this is happening in real time. So now you can imagine at any point in the game, you have one card in your hand because your hand limit is pretty much almost always one. You can play that card to a schematic before you can draw another card, or start building one of the cures once it's been approved. Once someone has said, okay, this cure schematic is big enough, it matches the requirements we need for this disease, Mark, go ahead and start building. Mark finishes building his little cure. He points to someone. He says, Kellen, I need you to verify this. Kellen looks at the schematic. He looks at the cure. He gives it the A-OK. We've now built that cure. We collect some points from it, which allows us to get the puzzle pieces, which ultimately allows us to win the game. All of this happening in this time frame of a 15-minute real-time timer. So it's very frantic. It's very fast, very, very silly, but shockingly good. It's a game that, despite like how silly and frantic all of that sounds, all the pieces of this chain are surprisingly cerebral. Like the building of the schematics has a lot of thought into, hey, what's going to work here? What's going to be a good use of this card? And what is also going to be structurally sound once I finish this cure? Once you start building a schematic, it's not just an element of balancing pieces on each other. Like, it's not that sort of dexterity game. It's how cleverly can I construct this so that I will actually be able to finish it. And once you eventually get all those puzzles, you can take apart, rearrange it in any way you can, whenever you want to, in order to say, hey, this is the best possible arrangement of these pieces in order to maximize my points. I really dug this. I do think it does suffer a little bit from the kind of the curse of dexterity games, I would say, which is to say that it's a really, really, really fun showpiece. I've had a lot of fun with this the 3 or 4 times I've played this, but I can already see my excitement to break it out waning a little bit. It's a very cool thing that I want to show to as many people as possible, but it's not going to be the first choice of game I would now break out to play with someone. I will never turn down a game with it. I think it's super, super fun. But yeah, I feel like it's like most dexterity games, has diminishing returns for me. Mark, you also played this with us at Dice Tower West. What do you think of Force Science?
Yeah, whenever I get into a new dexterity game, I sort of go into it assuming that it'll be a fun first play, but I won't really have any interest in it again. I was pleasantly surprised by my first play for Science. I found myself wanting to play it again. I think part of it had to do with just some cleverness in the rules, as Neil sort of explained, and you get that in a lot of dexterity games. I guess you get different experiences depending on player count, because in our game, I was focused on the building of these structures more than anything. We had another person who was doing the cure, another person handling the card play, so you get sort of more specialized, I guess, with more players, and so I was interested in trying it again and doing a different role, but I found the stacking aspect clever, and just the game in general to be better than I had hoped for, more interesting, more novel. I didn't suspect it to be a game that would ever be in like my top 10 or something that I would always want to play, and I'm not surprised by your saying, Neelan, that it sort of is starting to wane for you, because I think that's probably inevitable and more often the case for dexterity games. But I'm still in the I'm excited to try it again. I want to play it again, which is something that usually doesn't happen for me when it comes to the prospect of playing a dexterity game for the second time. I'm usually by the end of the first game saying, oh, okay, that was cool. It's fun to play dexterity games, but I've sort of seen it. I sort of get it. I'll play it again, but I'm not really itching for it. I am still interested in playing another round for Science, for sure.
There's something this designer does really well that fans of Spirit Island will know, is that he does introduce a ton of variability into the box. So at any given game, you're playing with a unique role that gives you a special power. There are so many different ways to vary it up and change the experience right out of the box. There's this incredibly silly event system where if you're using the app as your timer, interrupts you every so often with an event you have to draw from a deck that everyone then has to participate in before you can continue. That's ridiculous, fun, and very stressful, depending on what the event you get is. And different ways to change up either the labs you're playing with, the cures, the mutations. There's definitely a lot in the box that I think could keep it fresh. I think one of the things that's worth pointing out, which was definitely a sort of a bit of a barrier to me, is that this is a $60 game, which is probably on the high end for the type of experience that this offers, but it's certainly very, very unique.
I don't think the cover art is doing it any help.
I would agree with that. I actually think the aesthetic in general actively pushes me off a little bit, like the graphic design of it, which is kind of a shame coming from, it's not the same publisher at all, but Spirit Island is such a wonderful looking production that it's a shame that this just sort of has almost like a garish, cartoony style that I don't really dig at all.
But then the hot take for me is like, I know you guys both like Manara or Mandara
Yes.
or Moncala.
I liked it okay.
I like Manara a fair bit.
Is this better than Manara?
It's different. I'm glad you mentioned it because as I
I'm
was
tuning out everything but a yes or a no. but feel free to talk as long as we get to the yes or no.
I think I prefer Manara.
I prefer For Science.
Oh, okay. And sorry, it's different, but okay.
I think the
feel that.
real time literally is the biggest difference. It changes a lot. Manara is
Yeah,
a lot
that's
more
quite
collaborative of like, okay, what do we think if we were to add this pillar here or take this one? You
Yeah.
know, it's more about like collectively analyzing structural integrity rather than just winging it. But that is For Science by Grey Fox Games.
So a quick anecdote before I get into talking about Bridges of Shangri-La. I played Bridges of Shangri-La with a couple of the locals who have been playing games with Eric and Cameron. And I've been playing games at Cameron's place recently, most of our get-togethers. And then just last week, we got together at his girlfriend's place. And I was driving over there, and he gave me the address, and I'm driving over there. And I'm like, this address is familiar. Like, the house is not familiar, but the address is familiar to me for some reason. So I get in his house, and we're starting to play, and I can't shake the thought that this address is familiar to me. So I do a search in my Gmail, and sure enough, I had sold him a game on eBay and sent it to his girlfriend's address or whatever. And then I looked up the game, and the game was Conspiracy, the Solomon Gambit, which is a game that I actually had never played. So I owned it, saw a bunch of bad reviews, decided I didn't want to waste my time, sold it to him, and then we played it a couple of weeks ago. So it turns out that the first time I ever played my copy of Solomon Gambit was this copy that I had sold to him, and then we played it. By the way, Solomon Gambit is terrible. It's not very good at all. So it was a good sale for me, even though I think I sold it on eBay for 99 cents. Well worth it. Anyhow,
I was
onto the
hoping
game.
you'd had some kind of late night tryst with the...
No, I have proof that it was a game sold. I showed him the email. I said, this is a game I sold to you. We played it, but it's my copy originally. So, on to the Bridges of Shangri-La. What did I say? Shangri-La. On to the Bridges of Shangri-La. So I finally got a chance to play Bridges of Shangri-La by Leo Colovini. This is a game I used to have in my collection, much like the Solomon Gambit, but I traded away before getting it to the table that I've always sort of regretted. I've enjoyed Cartagena, Carlos Magnus, and Incognito, which are other games by Mr. Colovini. And I'd heard that Bridges of Shangri-La, while perhaps not a top tier, abstract-ish area control game, might be just one step below that, just a very good one. So I say Bridges is abstractish because there is a theme about masters sending students around mountainous villages, but frankly, that is the thinnest veneer over what is, for all intents and purposes, an abstract area control game. In Bridges of Shangri-La, everyone has a number of tokens in their color depicting 7 different images, which I'll refer to as suits to make things easier to describe. So you have 7 suits of tokens all in your color. There are 12 or 13 villages on the board, depending on the player count, depicting those suits. So they're printed on the villages themselves. The board will start out with some of your tokens spread across the various villages, and on your turn, you can do one of 3 things. You can start a new suit, quote unquote, on a village which previously hadn't started that suit, which is known as placing a master. So if there's a village that doesn't have a monk token or monk suit hasn't been played on it, you can play your monk token on it, and now you have the master monk at that village. That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is you can put 2 students atop of your pre-existing masters anywhere on the board. So if I have a dragon token of my color somewhere on the board, I can put another dragon token of my color on top of it there, And then maybe if I have a flame token somewhere in my color, I can put another flame token on top of that. So now I have 2 stacks of tokens, each of them 2 tokens high. That's called placing a student on top of a master. So that's something you can do, place 2 students on top of pre-existing masters you have. Finally, you can have 2 villages battle. So the way that works is you select a village where you have at least 1 token in it, and then you have it travel across any bridge. And so initially bridges separate all adjacent villages and they fight. And so when a fight happens, you basically send the student tokens, so the ones on top of the masters, from the attacking village to the defending one. Whichever village has the most tokens is considered the stronger one. And then there's a chance for the traveling students to defeat the masters and take over the master spots. Also, whenever you do this, whenever you ever start a fight, the bridge between those 2 villages comes off of the board, and those 2 villages will never battle again. So it's like a one and done. One battle between the villages, the bridge is removed, they can never battle again. You do this until either, I think, all the bridges or all but 2 bridges have been removed, and then you count up all the remaining masters on the board. Whoever has the most masters wins. Nice and easy way to score. I really like how quick and straightforward this game is. You probably couldn't start playing based on my description, the description I just gave, but you wouldn't be far off. And the game, even on our first and second plays, wrapped up in under an hour easy, probably much closer to 45 minutes. I also like that it's a game of shared incentives where you sort of want your opponents to share the same village as you, even if that means they're taking up valuable master spots, because it means that they're helping make that village strong for an attack. Probably most of all, I like the timing and tempo considerations, because sometimes you really establish a nice stronghold, you got a lot of tokens on a village, it's nice and strong, you're ready to attack, and so you perform an attack, you take over a new village, but then that stronghold that you just built up is now weakened, and somebody else who's connected can possibly come in and swoop in from a neighboring village and take over that stronghold. So you can build up and then use it up, but then you sort of leave yourself sometimes vulnerable if you're not careful. I'd say if you like quick, no-luck abstracts and like those kind of timing considerations, it's a solid game to try. I'd definitely be interested in playing it again. I just don't know if it has the staying power when there are a bunch of other games that do area control and shared incentives so well. I think a lot of cube rail games, it's a game that I thought of when we were playing this, that have the shared incentives, have that sort of thing, but maybe a little more interesting to me. They might do it better for me.
What about negotiation? This feels like you could have some element of diplomacy to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There is a thing where, hey, join me in this village. You can take that spot. You can have the master there. That's fine. Let's just beat up this other player. And we played it a couple times at 3. So it was hard to get the negotiations really going because it was like, It wasn't a 1-for-1, but it was a little bit of that. I think with more players, that would be a much bigger thing and might make it a more interesting game for sure. So yeah, it's a really simple game to teach, real quick to play if you like abstract, if you like area control. I'd recommend it. I just don't know if it's fantastic, but it's certainly definitely solid.
It struck me as something based on your description that's something like the 4 of us would enjoy getting into. I'm looking at BGG. It does seem to suggest that far and away 4 is the count to play it at.
Okay.
Which I guess makes sense with like the multiplayer conflict issues you were talking about at 3.
Yes.
But yeah, that's interesting. I like the look of it.
But it's not on a train, the green tank cried.
I know. Where are my trains? I cried. So that is The Bridges of Shangri-La by Leo Colovini.
Let's get right into our feature topic this week, which is 2022's edition of the Listener Top 20 Games of All Time. Over the last month, we've been putting call-outs for everyone to submit their 20 favorite games to us, and we have crunched all the numbers, we've collated all of the data, and we now have the definitive list, the Board Game Barrage listeners' top 20 favorite games of all time, and I think we should just get right into it.
I'm excited.
There are some fun surprises. Things have moved up and down here. I'll have some interesting little bits of information for you all at the end, but let's get right into the top 20.
Are we excited?
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
I think I expressed similar reservations beforehand. It's like when you're dating someone and then you find out they believe in the zodiac, horoscope stuff. And you've already been dating for like 6 months and then it's like, oh, that's the thing a Scorpius would do. And you're like, what?
That is the thing a Scorpius would do.
I do think that you will be I know pleasantly surprised maybe it's not the right word, but I do think that it's starting to reflect our community more.
Sure.
I think,
that's cool.
Which is fun. So before I get started, I thought it'd be fun, now that you guys know that there are some changes to the list, each of you give like one prediction that you think would be maybe not the most surprising if you're calling it, but like the most exciting change that you expect to be on this list.
I'm going to say that I think Biblios is going to get in there. Biblios is going to sneak in there. 1920, I'll take it. Either one of those. I think Concordia will drop from number 1. I don't think it's going to be number 1.
If you keep giving all the listeners that you meet a copy of Biblios, maybe one day you'll get there.
Sure.
I'd say more like 2026, 2027.
I'll take it.
Fiscal year probably for that one. Predictions. I just feel like there's going to be some silly, newer, like I'm thinking like Cascadia, Lost Ruins of Arnak, Dune Imperium that sort of infiltrate this list despite us crying the new hotness. That's my fear. That's my greatest fear.
Period. Not just for this list. Period.
But in life, yeah.
Okay.
Sadly, my memory has failed me, and I don't even remember last year's list. Though I do remember pulling out last year's list to like help win some drafts.
Wow.
Let me ask you a question, Kellen. So last time I'm looking here, and innovation was 8. Do you think it moves up or down? My guess is it moves up.
Okay. There is some pride. There is some pride here. Okay. I have a lot of pride, first of all, to be just in life, right? Again. But here, I wonder, I feel like innovation has like on a revenge tour. And I don't believe that I caused it, certainly. But its general sort of place in the ethos, in the space, has changed over the last few years. So I could see it rising. I'd be very happy for it at 8. I think 8 is very good, given what type of game it is.
I'm looking at the listener top 20 from last year, and Everdell is not on any of our top 50s. Viticulture is not on any of our top 50s. Orleans might be one of our top 50s.
I think Orleans is in Neylands.
Castles of Burgundy are not on any of our top 50s, and Concordia are not on any of our top 50s. So there are, by my count, there are 4 games that are not on any of our top 50s.
I think Castles of Burgundy may be in Christina's.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I think that's right.
So 3 games then. 3 games are not on any of our top 50s. I wonder if that number will rise or fall. Do you think Viticulture, Everdell, and Concordia, the 3 games that I don't think are on any of our top 50s, do they all survive? Do they add to the ranks? Do they thin out?
I could see Everdell dropping.
Yeah.
I don't see that for Concordia, certainly.
Yeah, no, I think Concordia stays. I think Everdell and Viticulture drop, actually.
Viticulture, you can't overemphasize Mr. Stegmaier.
Yeah, no, right. I've always enjoyed my plays of Viticulture. Less and less every time I play it, just because the luck of the draw bothers me more and more. But
also, what percentage of Americans are raging alcoholics?
That's true. That's true.
That is a non-zero number.
That is correct. That is correct. But I do think that the esteem for Viticulture in the board gaming world has dropped a little bit over the last year or so. It hasn't plummeted. I'm not saying everybody thinks it's garbage now at all. I just think that it's dropped a little bit. I think it's enough with everything added up to knock it off of the top 20 is my guess. But we'll see.
So let's start at number 20, the 20th favorite listener game of all time. And this has fallen slightly from number 17 to number 20, PAX Pamir's second edition.
Yeah,
I can see this.
I think this is only going to fall more. I think that the sort of PAX gamers is a subgenre of gamers, and PAX Pamir is the most accessible one, but new PAX games keep coming out. And even like PAX Vikings intent, right, is to be even more accessible. Not that it succeeded on that front, but I could only see this moving down. And I'm feeling like the trend lines on Pamir is that people are returning to other ones and saying Pamir is not as interesting or as dynamic as some of the other games in this genre.
Yeah.
I think that could be true, especially with the resurgence of Renaissance.
Yes.
I feel like I'm seeing more people talking about PAX Ren than PAX Pamir lately.
But only because they haven't played Porphyriana.
Number 19 has fallen a lot. And I think this will be to Kellen and my dismay, less so Mark's. Inish.
Nice.
This has fallen a fair bit. Inish is the number 19 Listener's Cup game compared to 10 last year.
Making room for Biblios. Take down the bad ones, put up the good ones. That's what I like.
Inish has fallen. Do I see this continuing? Yes, I do. I see that continuing to fall. I do find that, like the old generation with Blood Rage, right? There's a generation that loves Blood Rage, and then the new generation that loves Rising Sun and Komet. And it's sort of like Inish has like that negotiation element, so it loses the hotness, and then suddenly it's going to be on the backward trend. The way that like Board Game Geek's rankings work, right? Like, is crazy town. So if that's any indication of where we're going to get, I think Inish only has more room to fall. Even though it's so great, negotiation is fun, Mark.
I'll take it in Lords of Vegas.
Okay, you're saying like you're some like revelatory
I'm the one who brought
person?
this to the table. I'm the
Lords of Vegas?
I'm the Lords of Vegas guy. I live in Vegas.
How
I moved
many
to Vegas after
years
playing
have
this
I
game.
brought up Lords of Vegas in my top 50?
But who lives in Vegas? That's weird. It's me. Jesus.
You're driving around late at night for these weird trysts?
Number 18 on the list is a new entry.
All right, say it.
It is
Starts with a B.
It is not Biblios. It is El Grande.
All right.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right. I like
Wow.
it.
I think that's definitely one that we can be proud of.
Is this Board Game Arena doing
Maybe.
this for us?
It could be. I mean, there's actually probably a fair bit of that, right?
Hey, if you're listening to this and you're on our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, go to Digital Tabletop channel and invite me to a game of El Grande because I've been itching to play this on BJ. So do that now and I will accept the request.
Mark, you're playing this with
Probably.
me right now. What do you mean?
Yeah, but we're playing with some like guys in Finland and it's like we're doing one turn every 5 days.
That is true.
I love the finish, to be clear. I do love the finish.
It didn't sound like it just then.
I'm just curious why I wasn't invited to that game.
The finish are the people who invited
Yeah.
us. So
You're very much not loved in Finland.
yeah, I think you're big in Sweden, but Finland not so much.
They invited the two of you.
Yeah, the most Finnish of the Board Game Barrage crew.
Okay. Whatever.
Number 17 is also a new entry into the top 20, but actually
All right,
one that's a
here he
little bit
comes.
surprising to me. This
Or
is an
not.
oldie. Well, I guess as is El Grande, but this is Dominion.
Ooh, was not seeing that one. Did not expect that.
Yeah, it's really hard to rank Dominion 2, right? Because of the 12 to 15 expansions.
Yeah, which is, I think, a good a time as any to just point out some behind-the-scenes stuff. Wherever possible, I sort of tried to conglomerate stuff together. So there's a few mentions of Dominion Big Box versus Dominion, and like I kind of just took it under the all-encompassing banner that is Dominion.
Wrapper. Oh, this is kind of how you pick games for your top 50,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
All the games are one game.
Uh-huh.
All those solo votes for Dominion Alchemy
Right.
that you've combined.
Which might
into
explain
one.
why Exit is number one this year.
I think Dominion is still such a good entry point for people. I played a game not 6 months ago, and it's just like, it's so fast. It's honestly, that's the problem, though. The game is almost as long as the setup and tear down of the game. Oh, so good. Dominion is really, really good. I'm surprised I don't even have that in my top 50. That's dumb. I'm dumb.
Perfect. Keep going.
Number 16, also a surprising new entry, but one that I'm happy about because this is a very small game. And one of the things that I've said in the past is that small games often get underrepresented on lists like this.
Is this a small book-sized game?
It is not a small book-sized game. It is a small space game, The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9, a cooperative trick-taking game at number 16.
Interesting. Would not have guessed it. Makes sense, but I would not have guessed it.
And actually, interestingly, based on just what I was just saying, this was not one that was just any mention. The new version of The Crew was a separate entry entirely, but yeah, Quest for Planet 9 still managed to just entirely hold its own on the top 20. Number 15 is Scythe, which I believe is also new.
Yeah.
the
Wow.
top
A bunch
20.
of new ones.
Yeah, I think that there's a fair bit of just jostling around at the bottom positions, which makes sense. Scythe, I'm happy to see. Scythe is in my top 20 as well, so I'm not at all mad about that. It does strike me as a little bit surprising because I think, like we've been saying about some of the other games, I think the opinions of Scythe have, in my opinion, only gone down since its release, at least from my perspective. So seeing it rise into our top 20 is cool to see. Scythe's a great game.
Still very well regarded as far as like the BGG rankings as well, though. So it doesn't really surprise me.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Number 14 has fallen a few spots, but not that many. It is Terraforming Mars.
Interesting to see if the Arc Nova, once it takes hold, if it knocks down Terraforming Mars. Although some people have told me that the overlap isn't necessarily as close as I have imagined, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely in the ballpark. I definitely think there's going to be a huge contingent of people that just drastically like it more than Terraforming Mars, myself included, so far at least. But yeah, I think this comes on the cusp of a lot of people getting their hands on Arc Nova for the first time, so I suspect you're going to see a pretty drastic, maybe not into the top 20, but I would be surprised if Arc Nova wasn't in the competition next year. Number 13 is Terra Mystica, up 2 spots from last year.
Interesting.
And so, Neelan, don't you just feel like a dummy? Don't you feel like a dumb Neelan?
For what?
one-
Being the Gaia Project stan?
Yeah, you're like, oh, I need my spaceships and my laser beams, and, you know, I hate all you people who actually prefer Terra Mystica. I do think that Gaia Project came out. It was, it's better than Terra Mystica, and then all of a sudden there are now expansions for Terra Mystica as people realized it's, in fact, the better game. How do you respond?
I think 2 things. I'm not that well versed in Terra Mystica expansions, so I can see a world where Terra Mystica, with a lot of expansions, changes the things that I prefer about Gaia Project. I don't know if that's true at all, but let's say that it might be true. I will defend Gaia Project to the grave. Like, I think every change that Gaia Project makes, with the exception of the aesthetic.
To his death.
To my death. Yeah, no. Absolutely. I think with the exception of the art style, with the exception of the look, and, you know, wooden pieces over plastic pieces, I can take it or leave it. But Gaia Project is a little bit garish. Every mechanical change I prefer in Gaia Project versus Terra Mystica. I can see how there's probably a fair contingent of people that haven't played Gaia Project. They're just clinging to their old...
Oh, they haven't gotten to it.
Exactly. They haven't elevated yet.
Yes.
To my position.
Yeah, just so that that's clear for everyone, Dumb Neelan has just said that if you voted for Terra Mystica, it is only because you haven't played Gaia Project. Wow.
Exactly.
What an assumption, Neelan.
Number 12 is a game that has moved up 4 spots, much to my joy. A Feast for Odin.
Oh, come on.
Lovely game. Fantastic game. Should be higher than 12. Should be number 1, but I will take 12 right now. Hopefully we can push this into the top 10 next year, everybody. As A Feast for Odin. Number 11. This is very surprising considering that it is coming in hot at number 11 and it was not on our top 20 last year, but it's also a very old game.
Here it goes.
Agricola.
Wow.
Well, okay, see?
Gosh.
It's better than A Feast for Odin. The people have spoken.
Oh, actually, yeah, that's a good
Wow.
point. That does make it
Punishment
the best.
farming.
That does make it a little bit, yeah. It in terms of the score, it's tight, but yeah.
Oh, you're saying it's a little unclear.
Exactly.
But it is
you can
just
read the
ranked
numbers
better.
one way, you look at them the other way, you get a different story.
Yeah.
You know, who can say?
I see. No, that's cool. I mean, I think we're talking about whether or not viticulture is going to make it on the list, so that's kind of interesting to think about here as many compare those 2 games.
Sure.
No,
yeah.
no chance. No chance viticulture makes it at this point. It's not top 10. There's no way.
Where was viticulture on our list last year? It was
20.
at 20. Yeah. I think it would have had to have moved up a lot for that to happen.
People used all their Stonemaier love
To
on
Scythe.
on Scythe.
Yes. Number 10 is Race for the Galaxy.
Hey. Look at that.
Is that new?
That is not new. It's moved up 4 spots, though.
Yeah.
Great.
It's
Love
just
it.
a classic.
Yeah. I think this also could be, to your point, Kellen, a good BGA contingent as well that has resurged people's love for Race for the Galaxy, as it did Mark.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 9 was our number 2 game of last year, Castles of Burgundy.
Ooh, takes a hit.
Feld is misunderstood.
Wow. What? Is this Kellen?
I
What
know.
has happened to you over the years?
I like things. This is the new Kellen, the non-nasally new Kellen who likes things.
I've had such a
All right.
weird journey with Castles of Burgundy because I remember liking it, not loving it. I've now played a bunch of Castles of Burgundy because I've been in the currently running tournament on BGA, and I think I'm just turning and not really liking it at all. And BGA is weird, again, take that with a grain of salt, but I don't know. It's not speaking to me as much as it used to.
Are you playing 4-player games?
Yes, and I think that might be why.
How does a tournament for Castles of Burgundy work with the variable board?
They make sure that everyone is the same board. So it picks a random board and everyone gets it.
Everyone uses that board. Okay, interesting. Christina has really been pushing to play more Castles of Burgundy.
Number 8 has not moved, unfortunately, Callan. It is Innovation.
Ah.
Yeah, number 8. It's a good. it's a good placement
you're in the top 10. I mean, I want to say we've all said that this is almost certainly just attributed to your and Christina's love of how many people you've probably sold this game to, honestly, over the years.
You started that sentence strong, and then you mentioned someone not named Kellen and kind of
Diluted it.
got weaker. But no, that's appreciated. I do think that the tables have turned for Innovation, and actually it leads me to want, and maybe this tool exists, so someone at me if you have it, a way to look at Board Game Geek's rankings and see games that are more than 10 years old that have risen in rankings on the Geek List, because that would be really fun to find games that were at least 5 years old that after their initial burst have actually sort of had a resurgence. And I feel like you could find a really good selection of games, and Innovation would be on that list.
Number 7 has dropped one spot. It is Gloomhaven. I will just come out and say that there is no Jaws of the Lion on this list, so this is Gloomhaven's spot in the top 20. I can see, in the same way that I can imagine Gloomhaven slipping down my list as people sort of tail the end of the campaign, I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's the pandemic season 1 issue. I think.
Exactly. Like an incredibly strong high. Well deserved, but what do you do with a game that you literally can't play anymore?
Yeah.
The only problem being that it's on a list of the top 20 board games, and it barely qualifies.
Number 6 has dropped one spot, which actually surprises me a little bit because this has a new edition out. Great Western Trail. Fantastic game. The new edition's really good.
How many euros can one hold in their brain, right? There's about like 4 heavy euros, and then you just cycle them. Because you convert different things. Like this time it's cows,
Uh-huh. I also think that there's maybe something to be said for the fact that Maracaibo has probably stolen some of the love for some people at least.
Yeah.
Boone Lake definitely shares some similarities as well. So
Yeah. I wonder if there's some dilution. Across those
for
three
sure.
games.
As people like gravitate towards their favorites and pick the wrong one, as in the case of Terra Mystica. Number 5 on the list. Here it is. Drum roll. Mark, are you ready?
Do it.
It's Concordia.
Oh, you bastard.
You were still holding out hope that
Yeah.
it could be Biblios
There's
this
still 4
high?
spots. There's still 4 spots. It could happen.
And
It
I'm
could
the one
happen.
with pride? Too much pride on the show?
It could happen. I believe.
So yeah,
All
this,
right, so
this is slipped
Concordia.
from number 1.
5. That's a significant drop. I mean, still obviously top 5 game for
Yeah.
our listeners, so still way high up there. But interesting to see it drop.
Has anyone played Concordia this year?
I think I've done it
I have
once on
not.
BGA, but no. Not
How
more
was
than
it
that.
on BGA?
No, sorry, not BGA. Whatever the other Yucata,
Yucata
whatever the
is-
platform is that it's on.
Yeah. The first game I ever played with listeners was Concordia on Yucata or whatever, and I won. It was logged.
I think what was interesting about this is, for many reasons, I feel like we had an audience that shared its taste a lot with the Shut Up and Sit Down audience, and I think Concordia always represents a little bit of the Shut Up and Sit Down taste. So one of the things I think that's interesting about this year is you're starting to see a more distinct BGB taste on the list versus previous years.
So down with Concordia is what you're saying.
Exactly. It is now
And
being
remember,
banned.
guys,
Well, since,
I am
since
not-
Quinns and I banned it, I think maybe that's
Yeah.
the reason, right?
Just remember, it is dumb Neelan making these comments, not Kellen.
Number 4 is a game that has moved up 3 spots. So a opportunistic climber in the wake of Concordia. This is Root from number 7 last year to number 4. And this makes all the sense in the world. Root continues to put out great expansions. You know, it's a game that by any count just is getting better and better as it's getting more diverse, interesting asymmetric factions and more ways to play it.
I think I need to play Root again. I need to dive back in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I think that any game that inspires content creators who only focus on that game is something to pay attention to. It's like
that's fair.
There's Twilight Imperium media, there's Gloomhaven media, there's Root media. Like there's something going on there that extends beyond itself. Very interesting.
This Biblios media.
Yeah, your network that you've set up.
And then I think this may be the most interesting, but maybe not that surprising thing of all. A brand new entry for number 3.
Here it is.
Mark,
It
are
is.
you ready?
I'm ready to say it.
It is Hansa Teutonica.
Oh my gosh.
Interesting.
So, I mean, let's walk through this. We got a brand new release of the big box, which is a great new entry point for people to play it. And I think this is one of those games that kind of like languished for a while until people not languished. Obviously, it was always a great game, but I think in the last 4 years, people have been singing its praises, ourselves included.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at the broader board gaming sphere, I think Hansa Teutonica is super represented by like Shut Up and Sit Down, Us, So Very Wrong About Games, and others. Like it's pretty universally like this, like, hey man, Euros used to be different, you know, and you should check out Hansa Teutonica. It also is not too long. I think that length can be a barrier for many people to try some of these games, and Hansa Teutonica, you can bust it out at a convention, and I saw many people at Dice Tower West getting exposed to it for the first time and just really digging it. So, yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, pretty happy with that. Fantastic game. Number 2 is only a slight nudge up from its previous position at number 3. This is Brass Birmingham. As a reminder, this is distinct from Brass Lancashire, which if you submitted Brass on your list, I counted it as Lancashire. So take that as you will. Brass Birmingham is still the number 2 game on the listener top 20.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, this surprises me.
It doesn't surprise me. I could see this being number 1 or number 2 for sure. I wonder, I mean, obviously I understand why you counted them the way you did, Neelan, but I wonder how many of those brass votes would have been for Brass Birmingham, and if that would have made a difference. But it makes sense the way you're counting it. But I can see this as one of our listeners' top 3 games for sure.
I will say this, Mark, that based on the score for the number 1 game, I don't think it would have
mattered.
Yeah, because we're talking about I would say almost 20% jump in the score until you get to the number 1, which is Spirit Island.
I think I know. Yeah, Spirit Island.
I was ready to guess it too.
Yeah. This surprises me. I mean, I would see Spirit Island as a top 5 game for our listeners, but it does surprise me, I guess, as the number 1. I don't know.
Can you play this solo?
Yes.
Is it prominent to do so?
Yes.
I would say so, yeah. And there's a bunch of different people that would say either play it with 1, 2, 4 spirits single-handedly. It doesn't really have a strict way to play it solo that's just any different from, hey, just multi-hand, the cooperative game.
Yeah. And are there other heavy Euro co-op games? Because it feels pretty novel to me. And again, these are waters that I don't tread in very often personally. And a lot of those other games that I can think of have a narrative component to them, which Spirit Island doesn't really. It's just like a gameplay focused, pretty hard to get your head around co-op game. It's like Pandemic for grown-ups, quote unquote, here. Like, what else exists in that space?
I'm racking my brain trying to think of anything that's not a camp. You know, as soon as you said heavy co-op, like Gloomhaven springs to mind, but that is a campaign game.
Yeah. I think the big ones are campaign games. I think it's like Gloomhaven, it's like Pandemic Legacy, it's like Arkham Horror. The only one I think fits the same sort of space is probably Mage Knight.
Oh, that's yeah, I think that's a great choice, yeah.
And was very, very popular in its day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's room here, board game designers. Get in there.
the heavy solo co-op game, yeah. That is our listener top 20 list. I'm just going to run down it really quickly one more time. At number 20, Pax Pamir 2nd Edition, then Inish, then El Grande, Dominion, The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9, Scythe, Terraforming Mars, Terra Mystica, A Feast for Odin, Agricola. Then at number 10, Race for the Galaxy, The Castles of Burgundy, Innovation, Gloomhaven, Great Western Trail, Concordia, Root, Hansa Teutonica, Brass Birmingham, and our number 1 listener game, Spirit Island. That's a cool list. I think those are some great games.
Yeah, agreed. And number 21, Biblios.
Mark, just because I am feeling for you, let's find where Biblios is.
I mean, is this going to make me happy?
Well, I'm still scrolling. Let's just say that. Search. Okay, 409.
Okay.
Not bad. You're in the top 500.
Top 410.
Yeah,
I'll take it. Top 410.
Exactly.
Oh, my God.
You were nowhere near.
Oh, that is
You
depressing.
have no influence.
That is
None.
depressing.
409th most influence. I will say that I would be very happy to delete the Board Game Geek top 20 and put the BGB listener top 20 right in its place, vanquishing games like Star Wars Rebellion, War of the Ring, Nemesis, and Dune Imperium out of just like yeeting them out of existence.
Funny you say that, actually, Callan, because one thing that really did surprise me is that War of the Ring is number 26 on our list. So not that far from
Well,
the top
thank
20.
God. Thank God we got it in.
If you guys are interested, let me just rattle off the 21 to 30 just to see what the things sitting close to the top there. 21, Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, then Cosmic Encounter at 22, Wingspan, Azul, Tigris and Euphrates, War of the Rings 2nd Edition, Food Chain Magnate, Marvel Champions the Card Game, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, and Pipeline.
Huh. That's an interesting collection.
Yeah. And then, as usual, I have like a few little fun facts and just little unofficial prizes to give away to people that have interesting submissions. I always like to find the people who are closest to certain people in taste. The submitter who is closest to Christina's list is Frankensam in our Discord. Sam, who lovely person who we met at Dice Tower West. To Kellen's list is a user called Jared the First.
My boy.
Closest to Mark's list is Nandes, Nandes.
All right.
And the
Okay,
closest...
where did Nandy's have Biblios? Can you just tell me that? Do you
I
have
can find that
information
for
on
you,
hand?
actually. Let me see.
Because I don't want the person who's closest match to me didn't even have Biblios on the list, because that will really break my heart.
I hate to tell you, Mark, they
must
did not have Biblios on their list.
Are you serious? Nandy's, can you please just play Biblios once?
Closest to my list is the other Sam, Sarul, in our Discord. Also a great friend of the podcast. And then I also have what is closest to our collective BGB taste, and that is a user called SPeter22.
Is that like most influenced by us?
Most influenced by us collectively, exactly.
S. Peter 22.
And
I'm
yeah,
guessing S. Peter 22 didn't have Biblios on their list either at this point.
Mark, you heard 408? Like
409.
That's like how many?
409th. Can I tell you
out of
something?
how many, Neelan? Out of how many?
out of how
total?
many total games?
411
like
probably.
600.
828.
So top
you-
half. Great. Thanks a lot.
You
Jesus.
barely made it in the top half.
Can I tell you what's the most
That
depressing?
means like
I-
three people voted for it.
Listen to this. It's even worse than that. Biblios on the BGG top list on their rankings is 392. So I've somehow made it worse.
Yeah. You couldn't even.
I've devoted my
Influence.
life to this game, and I've somehow made it worse.
I think one of the things that's worth pointing out as well, though, Mark, is like this is. I mean, not that this is really going to help. Maybe, depending how you look at it, is this could be everyone's 21st favorite game. You know, which
Sure.
means it just didn't even enter the calculations.
Sure.
There's some. Some comfort to be taken in that.
I'm just appealing a year in advance for the pity vote next year. Can we just get it not just in the top 100 is all I'm asking for. Nandy's, I'm looking at you, Nandy's, please.
Thank you, everybody, for submitting your lists. I love doing this. It's definitely a fair bit of work going through the data, but it's a joy. Thank you for sending them in. We will be doing this again, we hope, next year. But until then, I think that is going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you all so much for joining us. You can talk about everyone's favorite games in our Discord. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion around this one over at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. Head over to the podcast channel and give us your thoughts about what did and didn't make it into the top 20 this year. You can reach out to us on all of our social media. You can find us on Twitter, or you can find us on Facebook. Just search for those. Or you can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Thank you to Heart Society for our intro and outro music, What's on Your Mind, Kid, and goodbye.
Bye.
Good night. Everyone uses that board. Okay, interesting. Christina has really been pushing to play more Castles of Burgundy, so What? Oh, apparently my house is shaking. Christina's like, why are you recording a podcast? The house is shaking. Like an earthquake? The wind? The wind? She's saying it's because we live in an apartment. Things are hitting things. We can't afford a house. Like you, Mark, the Lord of Vegas.
I will defend Gaia Project to the grave, to the grave, to the grave. I will defend Gaia Project to the grave.